Welcome, everyone. I am Sharon Green Middleton, Vice President of the City Council, representative of the 6th Council District, and Chairperson of the Economic and Community Development Committee. This afternoon, we will hold a work session for Bill number 21-0117 and a public hearing for Bill number 21-0194. In attendance today, we have the members of the committee and John Bullock of the 9th District.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mark Conway of the 4th District.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Antonio Glover
Thank you,
of
Madam
the
Chair.
13th District.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Odette Ramos of the 14th District.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Robert Stokes of the 12th District.
Thank you, I appreciate it, thank you, sorry about that.
And checking to see any other council. Oh, and we have Ryan Dorsey of the 3rd District. Moving on to members of the Office of the President, I see Lucy Font, Staff Assistant for Legislative Affairs. And representing the Office of the Mayor,
Sophie's here.
I'm sorry, Adam Adair. Abdare, thank you.
And Sophia.
And Sophia Geberwatt? Okay, thank you. And also I see Graham Young of Department of Transportation here. And also I see Liam Davis of the Department of Transportation.
And Pedro's here too.
And Pedro,
He's on other bill.
okay.
He's on another bill. Something.
Madam Chair, Luciano Diaz, also from DOT, he's on our policy team.
Tell him to use the mic.
Lucy, could you recognize yourself? This,
Why don't you introduce yourself, Luciano?
introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm new with DOT.
Use the microphone, use the microphone.
Here, use this one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm new with DOT, working on the policy team as a policy analyst. You might have heard from me. I've already corresponded with City Council a few times.
Okay.
And just very happy to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And just so you remember, all the agencies that check in, make sure you sign in on the sheet and put your organization on here as well. And Jennifer will take care of that. And we also have Jennifer Coates, which is staff to this committee. Okay, let's begin. Bill number 21-0117, termination of administrative parking regulations, peak hour parking restrictions. For the purpose of terminating peak hour parking restrictions, number 1 on the 100 through 800 blocks of East 33rd Street, number 2 on the 2700 through 3600 blocks of Hillen Road, number 3 on the 33 through 3500 blocks of the Alameda, number 4 on the 2500 through 3200 blocks of Loch Raven Boulevard, and number 5 on the 2900 through 4300 blocks of Greenmont Avenue. This bill was introduced on August 16th, 2021. A public hearing was held on November 16th, 2021. The committee will resume discussion of the bill. Because this is a work session, public testimony will not be taken for this bill today. The bill was sponsored by Councilwoman Ramos, and at this time, if Councilwoman Ramos would like to make comments, please do.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sitting on this side because I can't see over this thing. I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for the opportunity.
Pull the mic up to you.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair and staff and colleagues for the opportunity to discuss this bill again. Again, this bill, what it does is it removes peak hour parking restrictions from many of the corridors in my district. The idea isn't just to have residents not have to move their cars at 4 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 7 o'clock in the morning, but also for traffic calming. So at our last hearing, we had a report from DOT. They will be presenting today the findings from the study that they've done about peak hour parking restriction removal. So we'll hear that first today, and then go into our discussion. I've also presented to all of you amendments that were sent around by Ms. Coates that add a few more blocks and take away a couple of others, as one of our colleagues wanted to have some blocks in his district, but adjacent to mine, added to the bill. So I appreciate everybody's time, and with your permission, Madam Chair, DOT was going to do a update on their report on the peak hour parking.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee at this time? And the committee did receive the amendments through email. Does anybody need hard copies? So while she's distributing the hard copies, and there's no comments from the committee at this time, do we want to go ahead with Liam? Do you want to go ahead and
Sure.
make comments?
Thank you so much. And Madam Chair, appreciate you passing the baton over, and Councilwoman Ramos, we appreciate your willingness to work with DOT collaboratively and have these work sessions, which we think are productive. And today, I think we're prepared to talk about next steps and actually seeing some things happening. I will say this, from the DOT perspective, our preference is generally for this type of stuff not to be legislated, but we are absolutely hearing the City Council loud and clear, and we want to be making some commitments today about some of the work that we will do and things that we do think make sense. I will say we have Graham Young here from our Complete Streets manager. He's going to be prepared to talk about some of our recommendations and some of the things we're a little less open to. I know in particular when we're talking about some roads that we're a little less open to removing peak hour, the issue comes up with transit and the potential for future dedicated bus lanes. The one development that has changed since this bill was introduced was our successful bill in Annapolis, introduced by Delegate Lewis, House Bill 53, which does authorize the city to roll out automated dedicated bus lane cameras. So that's going to be something that we're going to be working very closely on with MTA, and I just want that to be kept in perspective while we have this conversation. That being said, we are here to talk about some things we're willing to do, and I'm going to hand it off to our Complete Streets manager, Graham Young.
Before you do that, you mentioned something about a dedicated bus lane. Is that because the things have been lifted?
So right now, these haven't been lifted.
Okay.
Our concern is if you lift the peak hour parking restrictions in certain areas and residents become acclimated to parking there, it might make it harder for us to retroactively transition that parking lane into a dedicated bus lane. So our recommendations are for corridors to remove the peak hour where we don't really anticipate a dedicated bus lane in the near term or even the mid-range term.
Is there a bus lane already in this, on these streets? There's
Buses, but they're not dedicated bus lanes.
Yes.
So like
Mike.
oh, excuse me. There are buses and bus routes, but there's not a dedicated bus lane. And so one of the corridors that Liam is referring to is Greenmount Avenue, where the MTA and others have been thinking about putting a dedicated bus lane. As a matter of fact, on Greenmount Avenue, York Road corridor in Conway's district, there's going to be a pilot there. I still want to take out peak hour parking because for us, it's not about, on that particular street, it's not necessarily about whether or not residents want to move their cars. It is a traffic calming issue. And so even if we have peak parking there, and then I don't know when we'll get the bus lane, maybe in 10 years, then, that could be easily moved. My concern is just that we don't know what the timing is.
Sure, and we're going to talk about timing on a number of things today. And in areas where maybe a peak hour restriction removal isn't, and returning it to parking isn't ideal, I think our team would be willing to look at some other creative solutions. But, the councilwoman mentioned Greenmount Avenue. That's where CityLink Red currently runs. It's consistently ranked 1 or 2 in terms of the highest ridership bus line in the city. I think they will consistently get 10,000 riders a day, if not more, on that line.
So I know that parts of Greenmont Avenue is a business area, and I'm thinking that you want to alleviate some of this parking so that businesses so people can freely park
Exactly.
and go
That's right.
and help these businesses. So
Sure.
we don't want the bus lanes to take over, spaces for residents or people visiting and wanting to help the commercial area.
Absolutely. I
Well,
think-
I'm sorry.
Councilman Dorsey.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would just disagree with that. I mean, buses and getting people to and from businesses is critical to those businesses, no matter how they get to businesses. Businesses are not built on how many cars can be parked in front of them. I just want to make sure that that is something that we all understand, but that there's plenty of evidence to show that dedicated bus lanes are good for businesses, even when they supplant parking. I don't want that message to be lost here. If I could make a couple of other comments here.
Well, let me respond to
Yeah,
that
sure.
first. I just want to make sure that we are accommodating and helping the businesses as much as we can, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. If we have I'm not disputing a designated bus lane, it's needed too, but you got to be careful of where you're going to place it, and especially if it's a new bus lane, we don't want it to hurt or affect the businesses that want more people to come to their business. Go ahead, Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I have a couple just basic comments here. And just on background, I speak from experience in having put forth a bill of similar nature last term. In fact, if you recall, Councilwoman Clark and I put in a set of 3 bills simultaneously. One was for a bunch of areas in my district where I wanted to have the peak hours restrictions lifted. One was where places in the 14th district where Councilwoman Clark wanted to have some peak areas, peak hour restrictions lifted. And then a third one was in a portion of one road in particular where we share representation along the 2 sides of that same road. And we did this because we found a certain unwillingness from DOT at that time to have a meaningful partnership and kind of good faith work effort with us. I see that differently at this point with this under DOT's current direction and the direction that the department has taken as a whole. So I want to just preface with saying that. But the fact is that we did remove some peak hours parking restrictions, and it did nothing to adversely impact existing bus service. And it did create greater safety in the areas where we lifted them. I can say a particularly good example is in the 14th district, where along Harford Road in, say, the 31 and 3200 blocks, you have a lot of children from the Coldstream Homestead Montebello community who walk to the Montebello school. And those parents were really overjoyed that their children didn't have to be walking next to the morning rush hour traffic on southbound Harford Road in particular. And it's a really good example of how, by and large, peak hours parking restricted lanes are not used for the efficiency of public transit. They are not used to simply accommodate flow. They are used primarily for the least safe drivers, the most erratic and flagrantly speeding drivers, to drive as fast as possible in the place where they put vulnerable road users in the greatest level of danger, right next to the street at the curb when they are walking on the sidewalk. And these are the people that are most prone to go careening off of the road, like on Bel Air Road, where a 69-year-old woman was killed last week, and on Moravia, where a man will likely lose his legs because of a car driving off of the road the week before that, in the exact same place where another driver drove off the road 1 year prior. That is, by preserving the ability for people to drive really fast right next to the curb, that we ensure our city remains unsafe for all of its people. And so the last thing I would say is that whether by ordinance or by administrative action, lifting existing peak hours parking restrictions, as would be done through this ordinance, in no way precludes functionally the Department of Transportation from administratively enacting them again at a later date, should they wish to enact peak hours parking restrictions, such as for dedicated part-time bus lanes, as we have in the, for example, 1100, I believe it's 1100 through 1600 blocks of Charles Street, where, by the way, we have effectively no enforcement, no functional usability of them because of one or two cars that park in each and every one of those blocks every day during rush hour. So in the very, very limited number of cases where we have peak hours restricted bus lanes, they're effectively useless because the department doesn't allocate resources necessary in order to make them functional, to make them usable. So I would just encourage the understanding that taking these peak hours lanes away creates a much safer environment for everybody, a much more predictable environment for everybody, and that they can be put back in place at such a time as we wish to create more dedicated bus lanes without any hindrance, and that at such time we should be seeking to actually make those bus lanes more enforceable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dorsey. Councilwoman Ramos, did you have something to add?
No, I think that the councilman had covered in his second part of his comments what I was going to talk about, which is, that we can have all of this happen at the same time and that make it work. So I'd be interested to hear from DOT next.
Councilman Stokes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess question to you, Councilwoman. Have we had the business people, DOT, and MTA in the same room to talk about this? And the only reason why I say that is because if you look at North Avenue from Greenmount to Wolf Street, they got all kinds of bus lanes in there. They speeding up and down there like Indy 500 in the bus lane. I mean, literally, if you step out in the street, you in trouble. So just using the bus lane is a reason why it's traffic calming. when they put those bus lanes from Greenmount to Wolf Street, the traffic got worse. People speed more. You got 2 schools up there. You got a library up there. So I'm only saying that because sometimes when you're talking about putting a bus lane that affect business, that affect DOT, why wouldn't we just have a not you, I'm telling you, not telling you, but just a suggestion
Sure.
is have everybody in the room so
Yeah.
everybody have a better understanding
So
of
in
what's
this-
coming, or you can make some compromise, that's all.
So
Councilwoman Ramos?
in this particular, oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, thank you. In this particular case, this bill doesn't say anything
Gotta use your
about-
mic.
I'm sorry. In this bill doesn't say anything about a dedicated bus lane. It's just talking about removing the peak parking restrictions, and it was DOT saying, hey, we might use this road one day for a bus lane. When the conversation comes up on Greenmount Avenue, we have to bring the folks together. So I do appreciate that you're saying that. We have not been talking about a bus lane in the business area quite yet, because the bus lane pilot is further up north in Councilman Conway's district. But thank you.
Thank you. And I guess I wanted to just really kind of have the discussion
I appreciate
because
it.
we, throughout the city, we are, we have areas like the Pennsylvania Avenue Business District that's a historical black area that also is going through a transformation. You just have to have an awareness like this. And so, Liam, I ask you, what, just in general, can there be dedicated full parking lanes as well?
Yeah, so
Or, a section?
we're going to be, and I'm going to allow Graham to talk in more detail, because we're prepared to discuss some corridors where we think it's a really good idea to remove peak hour, and it's likely going to be restored to full-time parking, but I'll allow Graham to talk more about it. Okay. Just before Graham gets started, I know that we're considering a portion of Falls Road, a portion of Charles Street, a portion of the Alameda, a portion of Argonne Drive, and a portion of Lock Raven Boulevard. So we are making that commitment. And I think everyone here is making great points. I think from our side at DOT, we just want to kind of work with these initial recommendations, see how it goes, and we can continue to have this conversation. I think having these work sessions, this is a great environment to have these discussions and even open it up beyond District 14 if people are interested. So I'm going to hand it off to Graham. Graham Young, our Complete Streets Manager.
And before you comment, Grant, Councilman Conway, you have comments?
Thank you,
or a
Madam
question?
Chair. Quickly, as I was thinking about this issue, I realize it's not a straightforward, a simple issue. Traffic is incredibly complicated. I'm dealing with a number of issues in my district already. One that came to mind is the issue that I'm working with you guys now with, that I think might be worth learning from for this endeavor and thinking about how we think about this more broadly. I think this would be a test case more broadly. When thinking about that parking lane, understanding how many people are likely to park there is going to be important in whether or not it actually does slow down traffic. If you have 1 or 2 cars or 3 or 4 cars on a given stretch, it actually becomes more dangerous as people try to swerve in and out of the parking lane to avoid cars. So as we think about that, I just kind of want to put that up for consideration. If you don't have pretty consistent parking along a given lane, you're going to have people driving into the parking lane for short stretches to go around people, which can, in some cases, cause more problems. So just wanted to think about that. I know this is not simple or straightforward stuff, but just as a thought.
Thank you for your comments. Committee, any other comments on this subject? Go ahead, Grant.
Thank you. So I'll just give a brief rundown on the report that we did. So we looked at every peak hour restriction, peak hour parking restriction in the city.
Do you have slides or something that we can look at? Because I thought that the maps that you presented to me.
Yeah, I can.
Graham, if you can go to the stand right here if you want. You don't have to have your mask on. if you
I
want to
think
talk
I'm-
more freely. That might help.
Right. Thank you. So I'm Graham Young. I'm the Complete Streets Manager for DOT. And I'll just talk about the study that we did evaluating every peak hour parking restriction in the city to see, I guess, we broke it down into basically 4 different groups because we knew that there's so many peak hour parking restrictions in the city. We want to see which ones are the sort of most simple to remove without any issues, and then progressively more difficult, acknowledging that sometimes when you remove a peak hour restriction, you may need to evaluate things like, are there turn lanes that need to be provided, or other recommendations to go along with that. So we broke it down into, like I was saying, 4 categories of remove these restrictions now. These are good to remove. Then likely to remove, unlikely to remove, and then the other category of be very careful in removing these peak hour restrictions. The criteria that went into the study was primarily, we looked at the number of travel lanes, the traffic volume, but primarily also the bus volume. And is this street on our separated bike lane network where we're going to likely restrict parking for bike infrastructure, or is it on MTA's dedicated bus lane network plans? So in the 14th district specifically, like Liam was saying, what we determined was that Hill and Road peak hour parking restrictions were good to remove. Because of the changes that were made in the 3rd district, these restrictions didn't serve much of a purpose and could be removed. We actually did remove the peak hour parking restrictions on Hill and Road. On the Alameda, we are proposing these to also be removed. Lock Raven Boulevard, these peak hour restrictions can be removed. And the 2 exceptions that we had in the bill that were likely to not remove were East 33rd Street and Greenmount Avenue because of the high transit volumes. So acknowledging just from a network perspective, MTA is piloting a dedicated bus lane project in the 4th district on York Road. So they're not continuing that pilot all the way south on Greenmount Avenue, but we're just acknowledging that this is a priority corridor for them, and we think that a further evaluation would be needed on Greenmount Avenue so that we're not adversely impacting transit. And by further evaluation, I mean, there may be if we were to remove that peak hour restriction, there may be some places where we would want to implement a no left turn restriction, acknowledging that left turns are one of the biggest impediment to traffic flow or transit flow when you have 1 lane in each direction. And then 33rd Street, that was another one that has not necessarily as high a bus ridership, but it has just as many buses per hour as Greenmount Avenue. So we can send out this report. It was preliminary and it was just based on numbers really, so on volumes on buses or buses per hour, number of lanes with the restriction without. But like Liam was saying, we're generally committed to removing the restrictions on some of these, with the only exceptions being Greenmount Avenue and East 33rd Street.
So you said you'll send the report
We can send that by close of business today.
to the sponsor and Jennifer?
Yes, we'll send it to the chair, Jennifer, and the bill sponsor.
Okay. Any questions, Councilwoman Ramos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I sent you the amendments as well, and Falls Road is in there.
Yep. So this is, let me see. So we are committed to removing northbound Falls Road. We are not recommending at this time to remove the restrictions on southbound Falls Road, which is in District 7. Argonne Drive, we're recommending removal, and then it could be southbound Charles Street and northbound Charles Street, but I know there's discussion of retaining the northbound direction. Either one, we are committed to removing those. And then the other ones, the Alameda and Loch Raven, we're committed to removing those.
And so when you say committed to removing, does that mean you will remove, and when is that going to happen if I don't pass this?
So that means, yes, we will remove. Our timeline, we don't have an exact timeline, but we think it's feasible this summer.
We will shoot for summer 2022. And
So summer is 3 months long.
Mhm.
I mean, right?
So
Is
by-
it July, August, September?
Yeah, I mean, I think to buy us time, I mean, the amendment here says 6 months, and if we can get this done before, the end of August, I think that gives us time.
Yeah, the process of removing them, I mean, it can be as simple as pulling up the signs. I know our traffic division is interested in not just a simple removal, but looking at where existing no stopping signs are, things like that. Is there adequate sight lines from the side streets? So combining it with a sort of a safety evaluation of the signage on these corridors, since we'll be out there already doing inventory of all the signs and what needs to be replaced. In a lot of cases, the peak hour parking restriction signs are combined with no stopping signs in the other direction, and those signs have to be inventoried and then replaced with just the no stopping sign.
Okay. And then 30 Greenman Avenue, going back to Greenman Avenue. Again, I'm pretty clear that we don't know when a dedicated bus lane is going in there. We still haven't had a discussion with the community about the whole thing. I know that the York Road corridor is a pilot, and we don't know when that's going in when, next year?
They're starting engagement pretty much right now. So they're aiming for this year implementation.
Because, and it would be a dedicated bike lane going bus lane going north and south.
Correct.
So it would narrow that road to one lane going each way, which is what we want by removing the peak hour parking restrictions anyway. So, I mean, that's the only thing with Green Mountain Avenue is that, residents need traffic calming there. This is one of the ways to do it. And I don't want to wait 10 years for we don't know when it's going to happen. So I'd like to make sure that happens. Removing the peak parking restrictions happens on Green Mountain Avenue. And then 33rd Street, the concern is the high bus usage there, and you think that it'll slow down the traffic?
We do think it'll slow down buses, and then at intersections where there is a good amount of left turns, it can complicate that. Right now, say there's a number of left turning vehicles, and you have a bus or a vehicle that's in that queue, generally people go around on the right. If that's not an option, then that can create additional delay for buses. There's also re-entry delay, so when a bus pulls over to the curbside to let people off or load, it has to, if there's parking in front of it, it has to get back over to the left, which there can be re-entry delay. They have to wait for someone to let them in or a gap in traffic versus with a peak hour restriction, they just proceed straight. So in an ideal case, we have enough buses that peak hour restricted lane is de facto bus lane, but in general, even with the high bus volume, we're not seeing quite that amount where that's the case.
And then on Falls Road, I had this conversation with Councilman Torrance, where he definitely wants to have both sides peak parking restrictions lifted. The issue that you had brought to me was that they're southbound on 41st Street, there's no turning lane. And so that would be an issue with people turning left.
And it would be, you'd have to sort of trace back the configuration all the way to Cold Spring Lane as well, because right now there's 2 through lanes. It would just have to be a reconfiguration of things. Like we would want a left only there and a through only, and then a lane shift south of the intersection. So it gets, with that southbound removal, I think it becomes a larger project than simply removing the signs like we could do on most of these corridors.
Okay, and I also just want to make it a matter of record that I don't think we have a representative here today from the city solicitor's office, but at the initial hearing, they did say that this bill was favorable. So I wanted to make sure that was a matter of record. Any questions or comments from committee members? Hearing none, there are amendments from transportation.
No, those are mine.
They're from you, okay. Councilwoman Ramos, did you want to go over your amendments?
Sure. The amendment, amendment number 1, thanks to Ms. Coates, found a spelling error, so we are changing that, and then also adds the Falls Road blocks and the Charles Street blocks that were not in the original bill, and then adds 2 more blocks of 33rd Street. And then amendment number 2 is just remuneration of the bill. And then amendment number 3, again, adds the blocks of Falls Road, 40th Street. I needed to take out in 40th Street, and then also Charles Street. Madam Chair, I have gotten commitment from here in this room, on the record, from DOT for 4 of the streets that I would like removed right away. And I feel like we need to work out the Falls Road, Greenmount Avenue, and 33rd Street issues. So if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I'd like to table this until I can work those out and then come back. Okay?
Okay. So hearing that, we're going to recess this bill. And
I
comments?
just would like to thank the bill sponsor, Councilwoman Ramos, for her willingness to continue to work with us. You have our commitment at DOT that we're going to try and get you some wins here. And Madam Chair, thank you so much for continuing to be a great leader of this committee. Thank you.
Yes, this is a good example of improvements and changes that we'll be probably doing throughout the whole city. So thank you, Councilwoman Ramos, as well. Moving on to the next bill. Thank you, Department of Transportation. Thank you. And thank you for joining us at our first in-person hearing. It is. Okay, the next bill, number 22-0194, the Charles Village Community Benefits District and Management Authority, for the purpose of renewing and continuing the Charles Village Community Benefits District and Management Authority, providing for a special effective date, and generally relating to the activities and authority of the Charles Village Community Benefits District and Management Authority. This bill was introduced on February 7th, 2022. The bill was sponsored by Councilwoman Ramos. And Councilwoman Ramos, would you like to comment about the bill?
Also sponsored by Councilman Stokes as well. We both are on the Charles Village board, and it borders our districts. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, colleagues. 210914 is a city mayor and city council resolution binding by law. The community benefits districts in the city have to go through this reauthorization process every 4 years. The Charles Village Community Benefits District was established in 1995 after a long campaign by residents to get benefits districts authorized through the state. and then done through the city code. Other benefits districts include Midtown, Downtown Partnership, and Waterfront Partnership. The goal of these benefits districts, at least for this one, is to ensure that there is more, that the area is clean and safe. They do not substitute for city services. There is still BPD, there is still trash pickup, but they are supplementing those services. Benefits district residents in the benefits district voted to agree to have a special surtax added to their tax bill in order to pay for these services. And so the reauthorization process that we're going through today, and that they have to get their budget approved every year by the Board of Estimates as well, to be able to have that oversight. But also, this process is for us to hear about any objections or any issues, but otherwise to reauthorize their operation. Charles Village Benefits District covers the neighborhoods of Charles Village, Able, Harwood, and Old Gatcher. And provides, again, a sweep team and a clean team. And the executive director is here, and she'll talk more about her services that they are providing as well. Going back to this idea of what city services are supposed to do and what the benefits district is supposed to do, there is a baseline agreement that is signed every 4 years to make sure that everybody's still on the same page with the commitment for those services, both at the city side and also on the benefits district side. I will say, mayor's office, we need to have that signed. So I'm really excited to bring on the executive director and also the board chair to talk a little bit more about this, and also yield to Councilman Stokes for some comments.
Councilman Stokes as co-sponsor.
Yes,
would you like
thank
to
you. I just want to mention that Charles Village Benefits District been around long before I became a council person, long before you came a councilwoman, and they've been very supportive of the community. They add additional resources, safety and cleaning resources. I just wish we could do this in other neighborhoods, but it costs. You got to pay for it. So, it's been around a long time. So just want to say that I truly support it and look forward to us moving forward so we can keep the great things and resources that's helping over in Charles Village and Old Goucher, all those other neighborhoods who participate in the Charles Village Benefits District. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the committee will now hear from agency representatives. Is anyone here from the city solicitor's office? Oh, Adam, okay. Adam Adair from Legislative.
Yep, we just, law department stands 5 there, the report, approved bill
For form and, approved for form and efficiency, okay. Department of Housing and Community Development, I think Pedro Aponte, you're, okay. Is Adam, you're on.
They stand by their report.
Okay. And do you have what their report is?
Yeah, they support passage. I can give you a copy of this. It's off on the website.
Okay, and I think the Department of Transportation has a report. Do they have a report? So we haven't, the committee has not gotten any of the reports from,
As of the public of this now, whether they sent them to Natona or not, I do not know. The office is responsible for sending them to Natona.
okay.
Adams.
So the legislative office is responsible for sending them to Natwana, and then,
Make sure that that's rectified by the end of the day. But we have the solicitor's report as well as what you have in front of you, the housing community development report, and then finance is here.
and is there a Department of Transportation report?
They weren't assigned this bill, it looks like, from Legistar.
The transportation?
When did they get them?
From Legistar, they're not assigned.
Yeah, but we didn't get them. That could have been today at 2 o'clock or today at 1 o'clock. We didn't get them.
So evidently, needs to be a conversation to get the committee reports to the committee before the hearing. And the publication of the synopsis. We need before we have our committee hearings, and this was posted how many weeks ahead? At least 30 days or more?
No,
Not
for
that,
this one,
okay.
But, yeah, it was posted in advance.
Okay, yeah, it's important that the committee gets the reports as early as possible.
My mic isn't working. For the record, all of this was actually pulled from Legistar ahead of this, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, Department of Transportation is not on here.
It may be on Legistar, but we didn't get it before the synopsis was produced.
No, I'm saying that when you look at Legistar, the Department of Transportation is not on here. They were not assigned this bill.
Oh, they were not. Oh.
Sorry, I wasn't clear earlier. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. So we're specifically talking about the city solicitor's office and Department of Housing, which
And
we
this should be fine.
We do have.
have.
We do have.
And instead of transportation, we're going to be hearing from finance. And now let's hear from finance.
You did have a report?
Do you have a report? You got to turn them on.
It's right here on Legistar.
What's on the website?
So before you speak, I just want to say that it's good that they're put on Legistar, but they have to also be sent to the committee chair and staff to the committee so they can be distributed so the committee can review them as early as possible. That's been a long-standing process as long as I've been a council member.
And we follow that process all the time, so
They follow the process?
I'm not.
Okay. Okay, we'll talk about that, just the transfer of information at another time. So we'll move on. Does the committee have any questions at this time?
Madam Chair,
Sponsor?
yeah, the only thing I need to just disclose is that in 2006, I was the executive director of this organization. So I just want to be real clear that I was employed at this group at some point.
Okay.
That was a long time ago, but.
Madam
Well,
Chair,
Go ahead.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilman.
just a
Coe.
comment. Are we going to get these reports that we're requesting?
So Department of Housing, they did just give us a written report, yes.
Well, I mean, just getting them? Okay. I hope we do better with this. Thank you.
I think the message will be taken back. Okay, moving on to public testimony, we'll go ahead and take public testimony. And, yes, go ahead. Introduce yourself, and you're on.
Of course. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Christina Williams. I am the Executive Director for the Charles Village Community Benefits District. I'm sorry, I'm going to just let you know ahead of time. I refer to it as the Benefits District, so if I say that, that's what I'm referring to. The Benefits District was organized by residents and business owners in 1994, established in 1995, to provide additional but supplemental services to its communities for the purpose of maintaining a safe, clean, and welcoming neighborhood. While the last 28 years have had both successes and challenges, our focus remains to notify, educate, and advocate for our communities. And we do this work by providing services across three main sectors: public safety, sanitation, and outreach. Since its last reauthorization, the Benefits District has collected over 225,000 bags of trash, which is 3,900 tons, and over 6,000 bulk items, which is 105 tons. We have provided nearly 14,000 hours of security patrols, have supported community cleanups with tools, staff, and outreach, consistently communicated through multiple channels of multiple channels, including our website, social media, newsletters, and at community meetings and events. We currently employ 26 city residents, including the staff at the 29th Street Community Center, and nearly half of our vendor contracts are with minority and women-owned businesses. Like other organizations, we struggled throughout the ransomware attack in 2019 and the 2020 pandemic to maintain our high standard of services, retain staff, and keep everyone safe and healthy. Despite those challenges, we've been able to promote staff, support staff goals of financial stability and upward mobility. We managed to retain all of our employees through 2020 and have since grown by adding 2 new staff members who focus on outreach and engagement. This year, we hope to approve a budget that prioritizes our staff and increases every staff member's pay to a living wage. Throughout the pandemic, as city services were suspended and even now remain modified, the benefits district staff shifted into providing more services temporarily to support communities affected by some city agency reductions. We partnered with the Maryland Department of Environment to take 17 truckloads of recycling to drop-off sites. We rented a total of 15 dumpsters in partnerships with the Central Baltimore Partnership to support communities during the fall and spring mayor's cleanups. We partnered with the Maryland Food Bank to distribute 40 cases of water during Code Red days when cooling centers remain closed to the public. We have applied for ARPA funds with 4 community partners and the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services to support additional social services and install a public restroom to reduce the amount of human waste found in the public right-of-way. On the outreach side, we've created a grant program honoring a beloved member of the Charles Village community, the Reggie Parker Community Impact Grant. That grant offers up to $1,000 to individuals, organizations, and businesses who want to plan and implement a community event that supports our mission of keeping the benefits district safe and clean. We have also created and begun running an ambassador program that educates residents, businesses, and workers on various topics that train them on how to engage with one another, connect neighbors to resources, and recognize ways to address conflict in a restorative and sustainable way. Topics for this program include community wellness, intro to community engagement, opioid response, mental health first aid, conflict mediation, 311, composting, and project planning. Participants will then serve 10 hours of volunteer services within the district and plan an engagement event for their neighbors. Over the next 4 years, we plan on focusing more on outreach and engagement, partnerships, education, creating a workforce development sanitation program, and finding a permanent home for our offices and several small businesses and micro-organizations. We have a vision to be a community hub and convening space for community-focused organizations. We know that when we talk about public safety, that it requires more than patrols and a focus on crime, being as though crime is a symptom of the failed systems and under-supported resources available to those most in need. A safety survey was recently distributed in our community that highlighted by neighbors what some of their priorities for safety are. And those include traffic issues, as we just heard in the last session, litter and pollution, burglaries and auto theft, and over-policing. By pivoting our focus to highlight those issues where communities have the most opportunity to affect change, including but not limited to addressing broken streetlights, traffic calming measures, ADA compliance, and illegal dumping, we will continue to see the downward trend of crime that we have been blessed to experience. So in conclusion, to the point that Councilman Stokes made, we are working to create a program that can be replicated across the city without the burden of its additional taxes. And we believe that our program's goal is to build capacity for the communities that we serve so that they can better be able to participate in a political system that ensures equitable support and consistency. We should all come to a place where our services are no longer needed because city and state government, agencies, and community can all work together to accomplish the express goals of keeping all of our cities and keeping all of our communities and the larger city safe and clean.
Thank you so much for your detailed testimony, which was definitely needed. Any questions from the committee? Councilman Stokes?
I just want to acknowledge that Ms. Christine and President Miller over there have been doing a great job over in Charles Village with this benefits district, but I just want to acknowledge her great work that she's doing.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay. So,
Hello, were you gonna? No?
any other testimony? Okay, moving on. There's no amendments to consider on this bill. So before we move on, I do want to just make a clarification to Legislative Services Office. So this bill was introduced and read on February 7th, and the synopsis was given like in the beginning of April? April 14th. So the long-standing process, just for future reference, it's usually given at least 30 days for an agency to get a synopsis to the committee. And one step is getting it put on Legislar. The other step is getting it to council services so they can do their job and get it to the committee. So just for clarification, this is our first in-person, meeting in really almost 2 years. So because we're now in person, it's good that the council services get that through the mayor's administrative agencies, and she works with us to make sure things move and smoothly and we get all the information. So just that added step is so important. All that should take place within that 30-day period. So just a general synopsis of, so we can move forward with, as we're now in person. Is there a motion to move this bill?
So moved.
So moved by Councilwoman Ramos, second by Councilmember Stokes. Chair Middleton, yes. Councilman Bullock?
Yes.
Yes. Councilman Conway?
Yes.
Yes. Councilman Dorsey? Is a yes. Councilman Glover?
Yes.
Is a yes. Councilwoman Ramos?
Yes.
Is a yes. And Councilmember Stokes is a yes.
Oh, I didn't say it, but I can go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I beat you to it. Councilmember Stokes is a yes. All affirmative. This bill will move to second reader at the next council member meeting. And I just want to thank everyone for attending today's hearing, and this meeting is adjourned. You all have a nice day.
Thank you.